A T-Rex arm was about 3 feet long, shorter than yours, but pound for pound, it could curl roughly 400 pounds. That's more raw strength per inch than a professional powerlifter's arm. A limb that short should not be able to produce force like that. So why did one of the largest predators to ever walk the planet keep something that strong, that small, for millions of years? Here's the assumption almost everyone makes. T-Rex arms were a leftover, a mistake evolution forgot to clean up. Something so useless it became the punchline of an entire species. But evolution doesn't work that way. Useless traits don't survive 80 million years of natural selection. If those arms were doing nothing, they should have shrunk down to nothing, or disappeared completely, the way whales lost their hind legs over millions of years. T-Rex arms didn't disappear. They stayed exactly as strong as they were for tens of millions of years. And that's the detail that made scientists start asking a much harder question. So, let's start at the beginning. What were T-Rex arms actually built like? Each arm ended in 2 clawed fingers, not 5 like most theropods, just 2. But those 2 fingers were attached to bones that were unusually thick and dense for their size. In 1989, a paleontologist named Kenneth Carpenter examined a T-Rex forelimb and found something that didn't add up. The bone wasn't thin or brittle like a shrinking, useless limb should be. It was reinforced, built to handle repeated stress. That's not what a leftover body part looks like. That's what a working tool looks like. Here's what's wild about that. The biceps muscle attachment on a T-Rex arm bone is massive relative to its size, big enough that researchers estimate the animal could curl somewhere around 400 pounds with a single arm. For comparison, that's more than most professional strongmen can manage, and T-Rex was doing it with a limb roughly the size of a human's. Whatever these arms were doing, they were doing it seriously. So the question becomes, what was all that force actually for? The obvious answer people jump to is hunting, grabbing prey. But here's the problem with that theory. T-Rex arms couldn't reach its own mouth. The arms were positioned too close to the body and too short to bring anything up to the jaws. If you were trying to design a limb for grabbing and eating live prey, you would not design it like this. Whatever the arms were doing, it wasn't feeding itself directly. To understand why that matters, you have to understand how a T-Rex actually killed something in the first place. This wasn't an animal that chased prey down over long distances. Its body wasn't built for sustained speed. What it had instead was one of the strongest bite forces ever measured in a land animal. Something in the range of 6 tons of force per bite, enough to crush bone outright. The strategy wasn't a long fight. It was a short, violent collision. Bite down hard enough to disable something immediately, then use its weight to finish the job. Every part of a T-Rex's body was built around that one moment of impact, which raises the obvious question, if the jaws and the weight were already doing the killing, what were the arms doing during that same moment? In 2020, paleontologist Steven Stanley published a study proposing a much more specific use, close-range slashing. Not grabbing, not holding, slashing. Stanley's argument was that the claws, combined with that dense reinforced bone structure, could deliver rapid, repeated cuts to something already pinned beneath the animal's own body weight. Not a hunting tool, a finishing tool. Think about that for a second. T-Rex was massive, close to 9 tons. When it caught something, its sheer weight alone could pin prey to the ground. At that point, the jaws are doing the killing, but the head is a foot or more away from whatever's trapped underneath. The arms are right there instead, close to the body, short, compact, strong, perfectly positioned to keep slashing at something already immobilized. That single detail reframes the entire limb. It's not a failed grabbing arm. It's a short-range weapon built for a very specific moment, after the prey is already down and can't escape. Not everyone agrees with Stanley's theory, though, and that disagreement is part of what makes this genuinely unresolved. Some paleontologists have pointed out that no T-Rex fossil has ever been found with slash marks on prey bones that clearly match those claws, which is the kind of direct physical evidence that would make the theory airtight. Without it, the slashing theory remains a strong hypothesis built on bone structure and positioning, not a confirmed behavior. That gap is exactly why multiple competing theories still exist side by side instead of one clear answer. But hunting isn't the only theory, and this is where it gets more interesting. In 2004, biomechanics researcher Kevin Padian took a completely different position. He looked at where those arms were positioned during mating and argued they may have functioned as anchors, letting a T-Rex hold its own weight and balance during reproduction, since a 9-ton animal balancing on 2 legs during mating would have needed something to stabilize with. 2 short, powerful limbs pressed close to the body could have done exactly that. And there's a third theory that doesn't involve violence or reproduction at all. Some researchers have proposed the arms helped T-Rex push itself back up off the ground after lying down. A 9-ton animal getting up from a resting position is a genuinely dangerous moment. Vulnerable, slow, off balance. Two strong, stable limbs positioned right at the center of that shift in weight could have provided exactly the leverage needed to get back onto its feet. Here's a detail that supports this one more than people expect. Modern crocodiles, one of the closest living relatives to dinosaur biomechanics in terms of body plan, use short, powerful forelimbs to push their heavy bodies off the ground before they can walk or lunge. A T-Rex doing the same thing with its own short, dense-boned arms isn't a stretch. It's the same engineering problem solved the same way. So now there are three competing explanations: close-range killing, mating stability, and getting back up off the ground. And here's the thing, none of them are mutually exclusive. A limb this specialized could have been doing more than one of those jobs depending on the moment. Nature rarely builds single-purpose tools when it can build multi-purpose ones instead. There's actually a fourth theory worth mentioning, one that gets less attention. Some researchers have pointed to social behavior, the idea that the arms may have played a role in courtship displays or even close contact interactions between individuals of the same species, similar to how some modern birds, which are technically living dinosaurs themselves, use small physical gestures during mating rituals. It's speculative and harder to test than bone density or muscle attachment, but it's a reminder that not every body part needs to be a weapon to matter. What's consistent across every theory is this: nobody who's actually studied the bone structure believes these arms were useless. Every serious explanation treats them as a highly specific tool, built for a narrow set of high-stakes situations, not a general-purpose limb like a human arm, and not a leftover either. Here's the full picture. Around 1989, Kenneth Carpenter found bone density that shouldn't exist on a useless limb. That single discovery is what reopened the entire question. In 2004, Kevin Padian proposed the arms-stabilized mating. In 2020, Steven Stanley proposed close-range slashing as a finishing move on already pinned prey, a theory still debated due to a lack of direct fossil evidence. Alongside all of that, researchers have proposed the arms helped a 9-ton animal push itself upright, the same way a crocodile does today, and possibly played some role in social or courtship behavior. 4 different theories, 4 different research teams, decades apart. And every single one starts from the same conclusion. These arms were doing something. T-Rex didn't evolve tiny arms by accident, and it definitely didn't keep them by accident. The bone density says they were load-bearing. The muscle attachment says they were strong beyond what their size suggests. The position says they weren't built for reaching or grabbing prey out in front of the body. Every piece of evidence points toward function, not failure. So the next time you picture a T-Rex and picture those tiny arms as a joke, remember this: you're looking at one of the most efficient, specialized tools evolution ever built into an apex predator, just one that happened to be short enough to make you laugh first and ask questions second. If you want to dig into the actual studies behind each of these theories, they're linked down in the description.